Shedeur Sanders didn't flinch. Minutes before kickoff against the Vikings, he walked onto the field, stared into the crowd, and without saying a single word began miming, arms gesturing, face unreadable, dead silent. It looked absurd. It looked theatrical. It looked intentional. But within hours, the headlines called it immature. Dan Orlovsky was one of the first to pounce, slamming Sanders for the stunt and questioning what it said about his professionalism, especially for someone stuck in the third-string quarterback slot.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Orlovsky's critique was swift and sharp. You want to be taken seriously in the NFL? Then act like it. For a fifth-round pick fighting to stay on the radar, pulling a pantomime act before a game felt like career sabotage. And with no touchdowns, no game tape, and no stat line to distract from the optics, Orlovsky's take went viral. The narrative was locked. Immature kid doing too much too soon. Then came the twist. Within 48 hours, it surfaced that the mime wasn't some spur-of-the-moment attention grab. It was a pointed, deliberate message. A calculated, nonverbal jab aimed straight at Rex Ryan. Because just days earlier, Ryan had publicly torched Sanders on air, accusing him of lacking discipline, of not understanding what it means to be a pro, of leaning too heavily on hype over hard work. That critique didn't go unnoticed. Sanders heard it, logged it, and answered in the quietest, most unmissable way possible. Suddenly, Orlovsky's critique started to age poorly. The media pivoted. Sanders wasn't acting out, he was pushing back. Without saying a word, he exposed how fast the NFL media machine jumps to conclusions. The mime wasn't petty, it was personal. And more importantly, it was strategic. This is where Sanders has carved out his niche, not in stats but in psychology. His sideline stunt was pure narrative control, a silent act of defiance in an ecosystem where perception is everything. He didn't have the platform, the reps, or the highlight reel, but he had a moment. And he knew exactly how to use it. Because for a third-string quarterback, playing time isn't promised. But relevance? That can be engineered. That can be built through image, message, and timing. And Sanders has learned that lesson fast. He's not just a rookie trying to crack a lineup, he's building a brand in real time. One calculated gesture at a time. The stakes rise even higher as the London game looms. It's unclear if Sanders will even play, but what is clear is that he's already reframed the conversation. No one's talking about Rex Ryan anymore, they're talking about Shedeur. And Dan Orlovsky. His initial blast now looks rushed and out of step. In a league obsessed with discipline, Sanders flipped the script by doing the opposite, performing his self-control rather than speaking it. And in doing so, he made the entire NFL media world stop and listen, to silence. Dan Orlovsky had the mic, the moment, and the momentum. What he didn't have was the full story. When Shedeur Sanders stood on the sideline before the Browns' preseason matchup against the Vikings, arms raised, lips sealed, delivering a full-on mime act, Orlovsky saw everything but the context. He went in hard, loud, unapologetic. This isn't the way to behave if you want to be taken seriously in the NFL. That was the sentiment. A young, third-string quarterback putting on a silent performance on the sidelines? For Orlovsky and plenty of others watching in real time, it was self-sabotage. A distraction. A red flag. And that's the part that turned quickly. Because within 48 hours, the narrative flipped. Shedeur's gesture wasn't some meaningless pre-game antic or attention grab. It was, in fact, a very specific message, directed at Rex Ryan, who had publicly taken shots at Sanders just days earlier. Rex had questioned Shedeur's work ethic, his maturity, his readiness. He didn't frame it as opinion, he delivered it like judgment. And judgment from someone like Ryan, who carries weight in NFL media and coaching circles, doesn't just sting, it follows you. So Shedeur didn't clap back on Twitter. He didn't give a tense locker room soundbite. He didn't try to win the argument in words. Instead, he delivered silence. A pointed, theatrical, and precise silence, aimed directly at his critics. And that is what Dan Orlovsky missed entirely. The moment context entered the conversation, everything Orlovsky said started to feel off. His condemnation wasn't just premature, it was uninformed. What he saw as immaturity was actually discipline. What he thought was a stunt turned out to be strategy. And what he labeled a liability now looked a lot more like leadership under fire. Because Shedeur didn't lose control, he seized it. Let's break this down. Shedeur Sanders isn't just any rookie trying to find his place. He's a fifth-round draft pick. A third-string quarterback. He's the son of a Hall of Famer. He's operating under the constant weight of legacy, scrutiny, and expectation. The margin for error? Non-existent. Every gesture is amplified. Every misstep is a headline. And every reaction is used as proof, for or against, whether he has what it takes. So when Rex Ryan publicly dragged his character and commitment, it wasn't just commentary. It was a potential career blow. Because in the NFL, perception is reality, especially when you're still fighting to prove you belong. Shedeur responded with a moment designed not to argue, but to own the space. He didn't speak. He didn't lash out. He performed a calculated act of symbolic defiance, knowing full well that it would be picked up, debated, and misunderstood before the truth surfaced. And that was part of the point. Because in today's NFL, especially for players in Shedeur's position, visibility is survival. Staying relevant matters. Staying memorable matters. And more importantly, staying in control of the narrative? That's everything. That's what Orlovsky missed. He evaluated Shedeur's mime using an outdated metric of what professionalism looks like in the NFL. He assumed Shedeur was clowning because he wasn't conforming. But what he failed to ask was why that moment happened in the first place. The irony? That mime moment was about rejecting the very narrative Orlovsky tried to reinforce. This wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't immaturity. It was clarity, intent, precision. It was a quarterback saying, I know what's being said about me and I'm not going to play the game your way. And it worked. Within days, the media scrambled to reframe their takes. Fans reevaluated the clip. Analysts started to walk back their criticisms. And Shedeur? He said nothing. The moment had already done its job. But this story doesn't end with a silent sideline moment. It's only the beginning. Because the London game is looming, and that's where everything becomes real. The Browns are desperate for consistency at quarterback. Dylan Gabriel is stepping in as a starter, but his leash is short. The offense is sputtering. The media pressure is rising. And Shedeur? He's waiting. If he gets that chance and performs, it turns the mime into myth. It reframes the entire arc suddenly. He's not just a rookie making waves, he's the guy who handled public criticism with composure, controlled the narrative with creativity, and backed it all up when it mattered most. But if he doesn't deliver? If he gets on the field and struggles? If he falters in the spotlight? Then everything flips again. The mime becomes ammo. The silence is reframed as arrogance. The narrative goes from strategic to premature. That's the risk Shedeur's taken. But let's not forget, he knew that going in. That's what makes it so bold. He could have played it safe. Could have faded into the background. Could have taken the usual route of rookies just trying to survive camp, waiting for reps and avoiding headlines. But he didn't. Because surviving isn't enough. He's building something more than just a stat sheet. He's building a story. And whether you agree with it or not, it's working. Dan Orlovsky's regret isn't just about being wrong. It's about being loudly wrong in a moment that demanded more thought. Because when you move that quickly to criticize without the full picture, you don't just misread the player, you mislead the audience. And that's exactly what Shedeur's move exposed. This is a new era of athlete branding. Players aren't just playing the game, they're playing the narrative. They're managing perception in real time. And for late-round picks like Shedeur, that might be the only way to stay in the conversation long enough to get on the field. Because let's be real, if Shedeur hadn't done the mime, if he had just stood quietly on the sideline, said nothing and done nothing, would we still be talking about him this close to the London game? No. He made himself impossible to ignore. And that's the win. Whether or not he plays in London, whether or not he shines under pressure, Shedeur has already accomplished something most rookies never do. He changed the narrative before the game even began. And now, every snap he takes will be watched through that lens. Every throw, every drive, every decision. If he performs, he gets to rewrite the playbook, not just for quarterbacks but for what resilience looks like in a media-saturated league. And if he doesn't, then he learns, rebuilds, tries again. But on his terms. Because in the end, Shedeur Sanders isn't just fighting to make a roster. He's fighting to reshape how players like him are seen, judged, and remembered. And no matter what happens next, one thing's already clear. The silence was loud. The message was received. And the story is far from over. Let us know what you think. Was Shedeur's mime move a brilliant power play, or a risky misstep? Did Dan Orlovsky jump the gun, or is this just what happens when old-school minds meet new-school players? Drop your take in the comments. And if you're here for more stories where football meets media, where perception battles performance, and where the next headline is only one clip away, hit subscribe. Because in today's NFL, the game starts before the snap. By now, it's clear, Shedeur Sanders didn't just mime a message, he executed a media masterstroke. And what made it so disruptive wasn't the silence itself. It was that it didn't fit the script. The NFL is a league obsessed with order, with structure, with knowing your role, especially when you're low on the depth chart. Rookies are supposed to earn their place through humility, through work, and above all, by staying quiet. That's the unwritten rule. Don't ruffle feathers until you've done something worth talking about. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That rule doesn't apply equally. If you're a top draft pick, you get breathing room. You can throw picks, take interviews, and learn on the job. If you're a veteran, you can have personality, make bold statements, even troll a little. But if you're a fifth rounder trying to claw your way up, the expectations are suffocating. One misstep and you're labeled. One headline and your maturity is questioned. So when Shedeur, third-string Shedeur, rookie fifth-round Shedeur, dared to inject symbolism and strategy into a pregame moment, it shook people. Not because it was offensive, not because it was outrageous, but because it was intentional. And the NFL media didn't know what to do with that. Dan Orlovsky, for example, didn't see intention. He saw insubordination. A player drawing attention without earning it. A quarterback more interested in gestures than grit. And as quickly as the clip circulated, Orlovsky's criticism did too, blasting Shedeur for the mime without bothering to ask the most basic question. What? That's what made his regret so loud, even if he never said the word regret out loud. Because when the full context emerged, that Shedeur's mime was a direct, nonverbal answer to Rex Ryan's public criticism, the entire conversation shifted. Rex hadn't just offered vague concerns. He had gone after Shedeur's character, his work ethic, his professionalism. He questioned whether Sanders was committed to football or just riding the coattails of his last name. Those are heavy accusations, especially for a player who, at that point, hadn't even seen real game action yet. Especially for someone who's already fighting uphill because of his draft slot and famous bloodline. So Shedeur responded, with silence because anything else would have backfired. Had he lashed out? He's immature. Had he tweeted through it? He's defensive. Had he done nothing? He's soft. But the mime? It was pure deflection judo. It took the power of criticism and flipped it right back at its source without uttering a word. And it made every person who rushed to judge, including Orlovsky, look reactionary. That's why people are still talking about it. That's why this isn't just a viral footnote. It's now part of Shedeur's story. And the next chapter? It's coming fast. The Browns are heading into the London game with more questions than answers at quarterback. Dillon Gabriel is getting the start, but the offense hasn't found its rhythm. If things go sideways early, don't be surprised if Shedeur gets his shot. And that's the real pressure. Because everything Shedeur's built with this mime moment, the narrative, the control, the intrigue, only works if he delivers when it counts. If he gets into the game and plays well, the story writes itself. A rookie who used criticism to fuel focus, turned a sideline gesture into national discussion, and then stepped on the field and proved it wasn't just for show. But if he struggles, that same mime becomes a punchline. I should have been practicing instead meme. A warning tale for players who try to outmaneuver the media without backing it up on the field. That's the cost of narrative control. When it works, it elevates you. When it fails, it buries you. But here's what makes this all so fascinating. Shedeur knew the risk. He knew what the mime would trigger. He knew people wouldn't understand at first. And he knew the only way to truly silence the noise was to play well the next time his number was called. That's what makes this different from a tantrum. This wasn't impulse, it was investment. He played the long game. And now, London is the next move on the board. But here's the part that's easy to miss. Even if Shedeur doesn't play in that game or if he only gets a few quiet snaps, he still forced the NFL media to re-examine how they treat young players. Especially black quarterbacks, especially rookies, especially ones who challenge the status quo. He flipped the hierarchy, if only for a moment, and made his voice heard without saying anything at all. And that's why Dan Orlovsky's reaction stung. Because it exposed the exact reflex Shedeur was speaking to, the rush to label. The refusal to ask questions. The eagerness to define a player based on optics, not context. Orlovsky wasn't just wrong. He was predictably wrong. And that's what makes the fallout from his take feel like a cautionary tale in its own right. Because this wasn't just about disagreeing with a player's actions. It was about doing so with no interest in understanding why those actions happened in the first place. It's the kind of mistake that analysts can't afford to keep making, because players like Shedeur Sanders aren't playing the same game anymore. They're aware. They're savvy. and they're rewriting the script in real time. The mime wasn't a joke. It was a message. And it landed. So now we wait. The stakes are set. The critics have spoken. The story has been told and retold. All that's left is the next moment, the next decision, the next play, the next drive. Whether Shedeur gets to take the field in London or not, the pressure is real. But so is the opportunity. Because if he does get his shot and makes the most of it, then this mime moment isn't just a response to criticism. It's the moment his career started to turn. And if he doesn't, then he resets, rebuilds, reframes. Because even if the playbook doesn't call his number right away, he's already done something most rookies never get to do. He took control of the narrative before the league had a chance to write it for him. And that matters. And that silence? It echoed louder than most post-game interviews ever could. Shedeur Sanders didn't just create a moment, he built a turning point. Because whether you were rolling your eyes or taking notes, you felt something when you saw that mime. And in the NFL, especially for a third-string quarterback, that's half the battle. Making people care. Think about how rare that is. How many fifth-round rookies manage to dominate sports media cycles without even touching the field? Most barely get mentioned in press conferences. Most don't trend. Most don't draw network analysts into full-on monologues. But Shedeur did. And the only thing he actually did was mime silence. That's power. It's the power of media jiu-jitsu. The ability to use your critics' momentum against them, to force the spotlight in your direction without raising your voice. It's the kind of media fluency that veterans spend years trying to figure out, and Shedeur did it in his rookie year without breaking a sweat. And yes, there's always a risk in playing that game. When you blur the line between brand and ball, between symbolism and stat sheets, you leave yourself open to attack. You invite people like Orlovsky to step in and label you a distraction. You give traditionalists a reason to doubt you. But you also give yourself a chance to flip the script before anyone else writes it for you. That's what Shedeur really did here. He took control of Act 1. He didn't wait for the league to decide what kind of player he was. He didn't wait to be handed a storyline. He created one. And the beauty of it? It worked. Dan Orlovsky's regret wasn't just about missing the mark. It was about realizing too late that the old frameworks don't always apply anymore. That what looks like a rookie misstep might actually be a veteran-level strategy. Because this isn't 2005. Players aren't just athletes anymore. They're brands. They're content creators. They're CEOs of their own narratives. And the ones who understand that, especially this early in their careers, have a real edge. It's not about being flashy. It's about being intentional. And Shedeur's mime wasn't random. It wasn't just pre-game filler. It was a pointed reply to a specific critic, timed precisely, delivered with full awareness of how it would be received. Initially misunderstood, then unpacked and ultimately respected. Because once the Rex Ryan context came out, everything changed. Suddenly, the mime wasn't immaturity, it was restraint. It wasn't arrogance, it was defiance. Not the chaotic kind, but the calculated, surgical kind that says, I hear you, I see you, but I'm not playing your game. And that right there? That's quarterback energy. The position demands more than accuracy and arm strength. It demands composure under pressure. It demands leadership without ego. It demands knowing when to speak, and when not to. And in a league where rookies usually overtalk, overpost, and overreact, Shedeur did none of it. He let silence carry the weight of 1,000 headlines. Then he let the media scramble to keep up. That's the part Orlovsky didn't anticipate. Because the old guard still wants players to follow the same formula. Perform first, then express. Earn your voice through performance. But in today's NFL, voice and performance are intertwined. If you don't control your narrative, someone else will. And Shedeur understood that from the jump. Now, with the London game on deck, all eyes are on him, not because he demanded attention but because he commanded it. There's a difference. One's loud. The other's deliberate. And the timing couldn't be sharper. Dylan Gabriel is starting, but the leash is short. The Browns are fumbling to find offensive rhythm. And in the background, quiet, poised, unbothered, is Shedeur waiting for his shot. If he gets it and delivers, this entire arc becomes legend. The mime goes from controversial to iconic. The silence becomes a symbol not of rebellion, but of readiness. A reminder that quarterbacks don't just read defenses, they read the room. But if he fumbles? If the moment's too big or the game's too fast? Then the critics will flood back in. The mime will be repackaged as a cautionary tale. And Orlovsky's take? It'll start trending again, this time with receipts. That's the gamble. But Shedeur's playing the long game. This wasn't about stealing a moment, it was about setting a tone. About saying, "I belong here" without needing to beg for approval. About letting his critics talk, and then forcing them to listen. Because that's the thing. When your silence speaks louder than the noise around you, people have no choice but to reconsider their position. And that's exactly what happened. Dan Orlovsky didn't issue an apology, but he didn't need to. His tone softened. His narrative changed. Because once the facts were clear, the take couldn't stand. He jumped too soon, reacted too fast, and missed the bigger picture. And in doing so, he gave Shedeur Sanders the one thing every young quarterback dreams of: a second look. Not just as a player, but as a presence. Whether he plays in London or not, whether he lights it up or fades into the background, Shedeur has already done something that most third-stringers never manage. He's created intrigue, suspense, a storyline. And now the ball is in his court, literally. If he makes the most of it, this entire moment becomes a pivotal chapter. If not, it's still a mark of awareness, confidence, and media savvy that'll follow him wherever he goes next. Because the message was never just for Rex Ryan, or for Orlovsky, or even for the fans. It was for the league. I see you. I hear what you're saying. But I'm writing my own script. And right now, that script is getting more interesting by the day. So what do you think? Was the mime a brilliant clapback or a risky distraction? Did Orlovsky jump the gun, or was he just saying what a lot of people were thinking? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear it all. And if you want more stories where football meets media, where players fight not just for the playbook but for their place in the narrative, go ahead and subscribe. Because trust us, this season, the drama isn't just on the field.